I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Andy Kaufmann, thank you so much for coming on our show, Mental Health News Radio, that you've been on before, but also in support of our First Responder Mental Health Network.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I had thrown out a thing saying, hey, I really want to do a show about horses and mental health. And I'll tell you where that came from. I just am noticing how much the animals in my life are making an impact on me, and in ways that are very practical as well as spiritual and emotional and all that. And I thought, I really need to talk about this, especially for first responders, because there are so many places that do programs that specifically work with first responders. And I know where, the organization you started does too. So thankfully, my plea, please, someone come on a show. You were the first one to go, I will.
Of course. Because I spend my life on Facebook now. Just kidding.
I know I'm off of it so much. Now I really am off of it just a lot. But when I do go on, I have that discernment now.
Yep.
To be able to go on, not get sucked into the rabbit hole and get out. But I realize, there are benefit too, because I do miss out on some things that are really cool because I'm not on it as much.
Yep. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. So it's been a while. I think you were at an Agala conference in 2017 when we talked with you and Kristin Anna.
Yep. We were in, I think it was in Nashville. And actually that conference is going on. Their 20th anniversary conference is going on right now in Lexington, Kentucky. And of course I am not there because of my surgery, but Kristin's there and she's doing her thing. So
nice.
Yep.
Nice. Well, I know you miss it. That's why you're available to do this show.
You're right.
And we had to reschedule, listeners, which I totally get, because we were going to do it earlier today. And Andy's like, I'm having a horse issue. Can I?
Yep.
And I'm like, I get it.
Yep. It was, that's not for the interview story time. But yeah, it was everything is relatively good with the horse. So
yeah, they get into all kinds of interesting stuff. Yes. and we go along for the ride.
Yep. Yeah, it was interesting to say the least. So but yeah, everything's good.
Well, you guys are still doing Checkpoint One. So just for any new listeners, tell them a little bit about what Checkpoint One is.
Okay. Well, Checkpoint One is a non-riding, equine-assisted therapy and mindfulness and yoga for specifically the first responder community and any status military. We do everything that we do at no cost to our clients. Our first responder definition spans the gamut from police, fire, dispatchers, trauma room surgeons and nurses, caregivers. There's probably some more categories out there that I'm not remembering, but those are the big ones. And we started in 2016, and we saw just over 400 people last year, have about 50 active clients, and we see roughly 20 or so a week, and it's just the three of us still, but we're
Wow.
still doing it because we love it, and it's a need in the community. And we've really started branching into helping develop and maintain and support the local fire and police peer support teams, which is really good. And it's really needed. So that's really exciting for us with what we're doing with that whole arena right now.
Are you guys still doing yoga?
We're still doing yoga.
Mm.
We're doing yoga and yoga nidra and I rest out at the farm. And then I'm also teaching separately at one of the local studios Monday mornings for the community and first responders and whoever wants to show up and be there and relax for a little bit. So, yep, still doing that.
Yeah, it's such a great property, listeners. I've been there myself. I went through an Igala type session myself, which was profound. I still remember it. And Andy, just because you were there, and so
Yep.
you have my full permission to talk about whatever it is you saw, because I know it was a therapeutic setting, but that was before I got my horse. And I remember it was the big horse, which I found out later that was the first session that horse had ever done, right?
Yep. Yes, it was.
And then little Elvis.
Yeah, Tiny Elvis.
And then what was the other one's name with the blue eyes?
That was so that horse is no longer here. The mini pony. His name was.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Old blue eyes.
Yeah, it'll come to me. It'll come to me, I'm sure, here like in the next 20 minutes or so.
Right. Well, so we have these two mini horses and then this big horse, and I was so terrified of their mouths. I was terrified of my hands being bitten, and that terrified me. And it was but it was such an amazing session. And now, having had a horse and then getting private instruction from Kristin Anna, and going from my vet saying, okay, put this halter on and lead your horse out so I can check her out, and me looking at him going, you literally just spoke Chinese to me. I don't know what you're saying. I don't even know how to do that. I don't know. Can I be like in the arena like I was with Andy and Kristin, and I point at something and the horse just does it? And he's like, no, I'll do it.
Welcome to Horse World.
Yes. Now I'm like out there picking hooves, and I can put a saddle on and all these amazing things. But at that time, I didn't know anything, and you don't need to know anything.
No, don't. As long as you kind of sort of know what a horse looks like, you don't. There's no horse experience. Again, it's all non-riding. It's all ground-based, and the horses, for the most part, are at liberty to be free to make their own decisions with how somebody comes into the space with them. So.
Oh, man, if I had time before I move, I would go and do another session to see how I am now and whether that brings some weird preconceived notions about things because I think I know something or it doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the big things that, when folks come out to see us and they have horse experience or they don't have a horse experience, they go in with an agenda. And, horses, because of the nature of what they are as a prey animal, they can sense an agenda. And depending on how aggressive or passive that agenda is, you can get quite a variety of responses and reactions from the horses, depending on that way that you enter the space with them.
Well, I have to say that it did a lot for me, I think, being able to bond with my horse because I did that experience with you guys. Because I am and because I had the private work with Kristin, which is not like regular horse person work. It's like a spiritual experience with practical stuff mixed in. But I have been told that of all the owners that she's had, which, she owns me, it's not the other way around, but she's never really bonded with anyone or they haven't bonded with her. And she and I are bonded. And I think it's because of that and working with Kristin, and because it allowed me to go, okay, this is about what's going on inside me and what I'm bringing into whatever I'm doing with her. Like I got this education of how to do this where it's not about overpowering and putting my will on a horse. I
Hmm.
walk in there as I want her respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And she kind of like when I go see her now, which isn't as often as I'd like, but it will be shortly, we'll take 2 feet of walking together and she'll just go,
Oh yeah.
like she
Yep.
just relaxed because she's like, she trusts me
Yep. And
and I
it's
trust
all,
her.
yeah. I mean, and that's what, a lot of what we do is about building a communication and a trust and a conversation between, the individual and the horse. A lot of times first responders that come to us when after they've been a couple of times, they build a rapport is probably the wrong word, but this trust and this conversation with the horse, which very smoothly transitions into how they have been or are in their current relation, with a spouse or with a
Yep.
child, and they see these different different reality, different, the approach with the horse, and they take that translation and they bring it back, to their wife or their husband or their children, and they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, I tried the pressure release thing,
Mm.
with my daughter, and it was amazing the response that I got from her instead of a reaction that I got from her. So, it's neat when they come back and they tell these stories about how what they did with us with a horse translated back to making their life a little bit easier, being allowed to breathe and to have a little space, and that, give them that, the delay of being able to take a breath before they open their mouth and say something stupid, which doesn't mean that they're not going to say something stupid, because I do it all the time, but the
Ditto.
cognition of that is now there, and they can relate it to, being with a horse or being with the donkeys or whatever.
It's really cool too because it's oh and well, I would think this is some way for everybody, but who knows? It's really and what I learned doing that session with you guys was about how much do I trust myself?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The being afraid of being bitten, and that was nothing to do with the horse because, of course, they never even came close to
Yeah.
biting me. And
Yeah.
Secret, my horse, has never bit me. She's nipped at me like, okay, I don't feel like you cinching up my the saddle right now because I'm a mare and I just ate. I've had
Right.
the sort of lip me, but she just
Yep.
wouldn't dream of. And I'm not saying other horses don't do that, but my horse is
Right.
like, "Oh, that would be
Right.
absurd. Why would I do such a thing?" She's very much
Mm-hmm.
like the lady. But I think what's interesting is as you learn how to trust yourself, your relationship with that horse builds and builds, and that does parlay into the rest of your life. So when I think about like, okay, a first responder or anyone who has been exposed to trauma, and at epic, DEFCON 1 levels,
Right.
you do get to a space. I hear this over and over again. We just had Christy Warren, who's our first female first responder, and she was a fire captain, all this, and she just like lost it because she always was fine. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden, PTSD, trauma, panic attacks, all this stuff is going on, and tears are coming out of her, and she's never been a crier. And you go, I you're shaken because you're like, I can't even trust myself anymore. And what's nice for me is when you work with a horse, like you learn to trust yourself in a way that is really about trusting yourself.
Oh, it is. It's. I mean, and that's what it boils down to. And what's interesting is, we get the first responders, police, military, fire, whatever, and like I was, I don't cry. All my stuff is stuck away in my Tupperware boxes, and I think I don't know if you remember we talking about the Tupperware
Yep.
effect, but when that Tupperware spills out and everything's laid out in this chaotic mess, and you're crying and this and that. I mean, it's that release is similar, although maybe not as visually drastic as the horses releasing, the yawns, the shakes, the
Right.
biting of their legs. I mean, there are, as somebody's in with a horse and they're telling their story, you can watch the horses releasing the energy that they're receiving from this person. And, scientific data is there that, the energy from a horse extends, I think it's 12 to 18 feet, and they can sense it and they understand it. And 9 times out of 10, when we have our first responders and they come into the space with the horse and they are wound up or whatever, the horses are, because they're free to do what they want and maneuver, they'll usually move away. And if the horses are agitated and maybe they're running around, sometimes we'll take that person out and we'll teach them a breathing technique like 4-7-8 breathing or whatever, and let them calm down. And it's amazing. They'll walk back in with the horse in a calmer state, and the horse will come up to them. And sometimes the horse will, rest their head on their shoulder, or, the donkey is notorious for just resting his head on people's chests. And the ability that they have to see, feel, hear, and understand a person's needs. And if it's just they walk up for 2 seconds and give them a look or lick their hand and walk away, the effect that has on an individual is sometimes it's monumental, and it snaps them into this, holy crap, I've been doing this shit my whole life, and I just now realized, because of a stupid donkey, that I need to change. And it's the power. A lot of people are like, have you guys trained these animals? Do you have a special button that you push for them to do this? And no, they know. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's so funny because the most popular series on my show was always Empowered Empaths. I mean, that's that show, and we haven't really done it in a while, and we made it its own podcast. And now we're back to doing it again. And so when you're talking about, the horse picking up on how that person is feeling, and then they're showing a physical manifestation of it, like biting their legs or whatever it is they're doing. A horse is a giant empath. Like that is 100% what that animal is. So if you are one yourself, it's like a direct connection to all that's divine when you're working with these kind of animals. It is anyway, but then for an empath, you add, another layer of holy moly, what just happened to my life?
And and speaking, along those same lines, we've had people come out that, as we start talking, we don't talk a lot about the whole empath thing.
Right. Because some first responders would be like, whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But what's interesting is, as they start, sometimes we'll introduce, one of the techniques we use is called Masterson, and it's an energy movement. It's kind of sort of horse Reiki, if you will, but it's very gentle finger placement and hand placement along the horse's body. So there have been first responders that we've introduced this to, and to see them do this and get the response from the horse, from the energy moving back and forth, it's really started, in some cases, their own empath realization journey. Which is really neat.
Is profound. Like when you realize that's what you are, you're like, oh my God, I just walked into a fifth dimension. What happened?
Yeah. And then, and they'll come in this, and they'll be like, I can't be around a lot of people. And they'll say I can feel everybody. Well, okay. Let's explore that. So it migrates that way on its own sometimes, and it's really neat to see that happen. And it's awesome. We love what we do, and it's a lot of what we the folks will come to us. Sometimes they think, and I use that term loosely, they think it's for a specific event, a reason, whatever. And as they're in with the horses, and, it's a lot of them, we believe that the clients have their own best solutions. So a lot of it very, after a couple of sessions, migrates back to, their trauma levels started when they were 3 years old because they were getting abused, or their parents were drug users, or they got molested, or they got raped, whatever. And that threshold started when they were 4 years old. So it's been high, and then it just keeps stacking on top of each other. And when they get to that conclusion and can start unloading, these memories that have been buried, the relief that comes over them. And when they're out in session with horses and this happens, it's just amazing.
Hey listeners, a quick but important notice for all the shows that we'll be doing for our first responders. In 2018, the number of police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and veterans, anyone who's considered a first responder, who died of suicide was greater than the combined total killed in the line of duty. More attention is being paid, but help is often elusive. Even with more available resources, those who are first in line to help us actually asking for help for themselves, that can be the hardest thing for them to do. Mental Health News Radio Network is working with Stepstone Connect to give voice to our incredible first responders. Stepstone Connect is an organization born of the belief that accessibility and confidentiality will eliminate traditional barriers to treatment. Privacy and the peace of mind that comes with it, combined with easy, everywhere access, underlines Stepstone's mission and treatment philosophy. It's simple. With access to the internet and a device with a camera, you're a click away from leading mental health clinicians who specialize in the treatment of PTSD and other trauma-related injuries for first responders and their families. If you or someone you care about is struggling, please don't let another day pass before discovering what Stepstone can do. Stronger connections, everywhere access, stepstoneconnect.com. You can find out more by going to their website, stepstoneconnect.com, or call 800-495-3761. Now back to the show.
We had a session a couple weeks ago where a gentleman was talking about some just horrific stuff that had happened when he was a kid. And we were out in the paddocks or in the runs, and we were in, I don't remember who we were in with, but after we were talking, we were just standing there talking for about 45 minutes. We looked around and every single horse was laying down. And it was all of the stuff that he had released, just the calm that had spread throughout our 11 horses down in that area. It was just amazing to see just everything. So, and he recognized it and was like, wow, what did I do? You were able to let go, or not, let go is a horrible term because it's never going to be away.
It never goes. But to release some of the tension around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. I mean, I had I've talked about my background and you know it too. I mean, I had sexual abuse in my background and lots of narcissism and things like that and trauma and what have you. But, getting myself to a place where I'm not a victim in my life. And it's hard to, pivot from that when you started out as a little kid, because, you were one. And so to pull into this place of being, okay, well, I'm empowered. What does empowered really mean?
Right.
And living in a space where, okay, yeah, shitty stuff is going to happen in life, and you are victimized by that shitty stuff, but you're not a victim.
Correct.
And the coolest thing that I've gotten from the horse experience in my life is, since they are prey animals, is that whole thing about, oh, this is what it really means to be an empowered person.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like I can handle it, whatever it is. I have handled it thus far. And I know that I can, instead of being afraid of what may come or when's the other shoe going to drop or whatever. And I can still have those thoughts of, like anybody can, but I know that I can freaking handle it. And a big thing for me was being out with my horse and getting lost on a trail. And I was with her, and she and I'm out, we're off somewhere. I don't know where the hell we were. And she ended up getting caught up in those vines that have the little thorns on them.
Yeah.
So she was caught up in the vines. Then she had stepped on this like barbed wire thing that somebody had, was on the ground. And if she had freaked out, which she wanted to, I mean, God knows what would have happened to me.
Yeah.
Well, and I just laid down on the front of her, laid on her neck and I just kept saying, promise that we will get through this.
Yep.
And this is going to sound dramatic, but this is what I did. I didn't have a knife. I had nothing with me because only dumbasses go out without any kind of like toolkit. I had to chew my way through the vine.
But the point is, we got out of it calmly.
Yeah.
And as we were walking back, she was like holding in all this tension. And I finally went, and then all of a sudden she went,
yeah. Oh, they get it. I mean, people, first responders, military,
yes.
we tell them, hey, talk to your horse, talk to the horse, tell them what you're going to do. And they're like, that's stupid. What, the horse doesn't understand me. And I'm like, just
Yes,
try
it does.
Just do it, and that's the joy of, having, my own horses here and the horses at the farm. And, now I have a Mustang. We did a Mustang gentling program in November at Meadow Event Farm. We adopted 4 wild Mustangs, and we had 8 first responder military caregiver participants, and they got to spend 3 days working with some professional gentlers, helping to be the initial introduction to humans are okay, basically training. And it was phenomenal. And 2 of the participants just adopted 2 of them. They've been working with us. And then we've got the other 2 that are getting ready to be adopted out as well. But the experience that they got working with these wild horses was just phenomenal. And Kristin and I got to do the same sort of experience out in California last, I think, April. And there was a horse there that I, as silly as it sounds, I basically fell in love with it. His name is Salty, and I worked with him out there while I was out there for this 3-day boot camp experience. And then I ended up going back out for about 10 days at the end of the summer and working with him. And I was hell bent on bringing this horse back from California, this Mustang. And my wife's like, yeah, whatever. But it's like $5,000 to transport a horse across the country. And I just couldn't do it. And I was heartbroken. And so in September, unbeknownst to me, Kristin and Mary Margaret and my wife and seemingly every single person that I know in this community put together this plan to pay and get this horse out here for me. And I went out shooting with some friends in the morning. We went to lunch. We pulled up into our driveway, and there's this trailer there, and there's like 20 people here. And I see this white horse. And at first I thought it was a horse that I had to put down earlier. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not it. And it was Salty. It was this Mustang from California. And I broke down. He remembered me. And so he's here at the house, and just, not everybody is able to have a horse at their house, but he brings so much joy and calm. Every morning, I work with him in the morning. He's here. When I get home, he's here. He's this is his forever home. He's such an awesome horse, and I'm still working with him. So I can't, I got to get his halter on and that sort of thing. But, just the experience and, the ability just to offer that in sessions, for a place for somebody to go and get that hour of quiet, and whatever with a horse, whether it's a wild Mustang or whatever. They're not, unlike dogs, they're not codependent, which is a lot of people think, dogs and horses, they do the same thing. Well, completely opposite. So it's just awesome.
That's so cool. I mean, talk to me about how different it is. And you're someone that, works with horses every day. So what's the difference between that and waking up and your horse is on your property, and going to bed and your horse is on your property?
Knowing that my horses are here, I mean, number one, it's a responsibility, but number two, I still deal with my own crap. And, as much as I work with clients and know, techniques and tactics to calm myself, when I'm at that point where that stuff is not, I can breathe all day long, and it just, the shit isn't working. I can go out with the horse, or my wife will say, go out with the horses. And as soon as I get out there, and when those times happen, the horses know, and they usually run down to the other end of the field. But then, I'll stand there, or I have a chair out there, and I'll just sit down, and they'll come up, and I will calm down. And it's just, I brush them, feed them. And it's just having them there whenever I want, is awesome. And
Yeah.
you know, as since I've been doing this for a while now, you know, my wife has gotten to the point where, you know, I'll catch her out there sometimes. I have two minis, and she loves them. You know, so it's just the ability to have that available to me whenever is great. And I've got friends that live near me, and they'll either come out to the
Come
farm.
by.
Sometimes they'll come here, and
Yep.
just to see the horses. And you know, and I don't push what I do on them. I'm just like, yeah, go out and do whatever with them. You know, just be
Exactly.
yourself. And that's, you know, you don't have to know anything special. You know, don't wear flip flops.
Exactly. Closed-toed shoes, people. Closed-toed shoes. I know.
Mhm.
I've had people that just like I get to know them from wherever, or weird stuff, like, you know, the stuff empaths have all the time.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
where I meet somebody at a grocery store and they're like, all of a sudden, you know, oh yeah, well, I was a triage nurse, or I
Mhm.
was a fireman, or whatever. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. And they get all interested. Oh, you have a horse. Wow. And I have had more people go to the barn and go be
Yep.
with my horse. And sometimes when I'm not even there, and then text me
Mhm.
later, I went out there. Oh my, it was so amazing. I just went in her stall, and no one was there. And of course they've all signed releases, thank God.
Yeah.
And thankfully Kayla, who runs the barn, who's amazing, an amazing human being, was like, let it happen.
Yep.
They're like, I just stood in her stall and just like put my head
Yeah.
in her neck and cried for an hour.
Yeah. And
And
that's,
I'm
I mean,
like, oh,
yeah. I mean, we have, thankfully pretty much all of them, for the most part, you know, we have folks that come out, you know, from the VA or other facilities, and they're in wheelchairs, or they have very limited mobility,
right.
and the horse will just stand there for them, and they'll just brush a horse or just touch the horse. And it's just, it's so wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
any little thing. I mean, I think here's what's hard for me, Andy, and maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I'll just say it instead of trying to preface everything, but it's hard for me to explain what it is that happens. It's like, it's something to me that feels like you aren't going to know what the hell I'm talking about unless you experience it even just one time.
Yeah, no, and that's, the hard part about, we don't really market, but I mean, the hard part about telling folks what we do, I mean, we can tell them all day long about, you know, you go out with the horses and you talk to them and whatever, and blah, 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 and
Right.
this and that. But in order to get, that's why we say, you know, we ask people, come out for a tour, see the property, meet us,
Yeah.
and just see the horses. Because, you know, it's easy to explain, you know, to somebody, hey, we have a dog farm, you know, come out and hang out with the puppies. I mean, that
Right.
people get that,
They
but
get
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
when you say it's horses and they're magical, you know, they're like, yeah, okay, what are
They're
you
like, okay,
smoking?
when's the unicorn going to show up? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's, you know, there's something. It's, this is going to sound silly, but to me, being with the horses is almost like comfort food, if that
Oh,
makes sense.
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it, you know. And I mean, even, and we have folks that come out that have been, you know, they've been dressage riders, or they're hunter jumpers, and that, you know, they've been around horses their whole life, but they've never been or allowed themselves to be around horses the way we do our thing. And it
Exactly.
sometimes it changes their whole perspective about just the connection piece with the horse when they're riding a horse. You know, if you talk about uh, God, what's this word? The chakras.
Yes.
You know, your root chakra is right on their heart chakra when you're riding. And
Mm.
when you start looking at and understanding it in just energy connections, you know, it's building that connection, it's building the communications, it's building that trust in just a way that, you know, traditional riders mostly have never been taught. It's like, here's how you get on a horse. Use your legs, put pressure here, you know,
Exactly.
pull this way.
It's very
You can get on a horse.
mechanical.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's
you
all
can,
about commanding the beast that is the
yeah,
horse,
exactly. And,
having
you know,
power over this big
yeah,
creature. Yeah.
yep, yep. And you're not going to control a horse.
Mm-mm. They're going
You
to
know?
do it if they freaking feel like it. And
Yep.
that's just the
Yeah,
way it
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely. There's no, even the minis. I mean, there's, you know, they may be small, but if they want out or to move, they're going to do it.
Exactly. And they're so connected to energy. That's what's interesting to me too. It's like where my horse is at now. The people that own the property, it's a man who runs it with his wife, and he's a former first responder,
Mhm.
a veteran, and he's wonderful. And he also has kind of I can tell there's some PTSD, and he's
Mhm.
freely talked about that and stuff, and some
Mhm.
trauma. And I
Mhm.
can see how the horses interact with him.
Mhm.
They are constantly like, if he turns his back to go pick up a tool, somebody is going to come up behind him and rip his backpack pant pocket off, or pull the feed off the wheelbarrow, or what. Like they get all mischievous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet if I go out there, nobody is going to come near me and touch my pant
Mhm.
pocket without my
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Probably
I mean,
because
and
I
that's
had training from you and
yeah. Well,
Christina,
no,
but
I mean, and one of the, I mean, that's another theme, that we find very rampant in the community is setting boundaries, because
yes.
first responders and military are fixers. They want to fix. It's in the genes.
Yes.
It's in my genes, and being allowing the horse come up, and keep smacking you in the chest, or nibbling on your jacket string or whatever, it, it it's a boundary issue. And
Right.
if you're always saying yes I can, you're going to end up being taken advantage of, and
Oh,
regardless of how you look at it. And being able to establish a boundary with a horse, like I was saying earlier, they take this and they translate it back to their spouse or to their child, or
yes.
coworkers or whatever. So I mean, it's awesome.
It's so true. It's amazing. It's amazing what you learn about yourself. And listeners, especially our first responders that listen, it's cumulative, and
Hmm.
it's not what the world tells you how you should learn.
Yep.
It's how we are designed to learn. So it's very Yoda in the, you must unlearn what you have learned. I mean, that's
Yes.
what it is when you're working with the horse, because the way that the profoundness of what happens to you and for you and within you is something that society tells you to shoo away, and the very nature of your job tells you to shoo away to do your job. And that none of that isn't true. It is true to be a person that works in a very people world, especially a first responder. You have to follow these specific guidelines to do that. But
Yep.
what happens with a horse is it walks you back from that. And I think for me, like, the ultimate of it is when you can do what you do as a first responder, whether you're retired or not, if you're active duty, if you're not, but that you can do what you do amongst the world in the way the world expects you to be, but to have this profound cavity of knowledge and well of empathy that resides within you, because that space has been carved out from working with an animal like a horse. Then you're really being of service in a way that you can make a huge impact. Does that make
All right.
sense?
No, yeah, it makes absolute sense. I mean, the first responders in the military, they see the worst of what
Oh, yeah.
happens to people, and
People
sees
have
people
no
in their
idea.
worst conditions. And and it's hard and it's rough, and it's not something the good old days, you'd suck it up and drive on,
Right.
and that's still very prevalent. And that's one of the stigmas that we're very slowly trying to
Chipping away.
change. And and the great thing is that as we've been doing this over the last 3 years, police coming out to us was almost taboo,
Taboo.
non-existent.
Don't
Screw
tell
you guys.
anybody, but we're going to
you know
this horse place called Checkpoint
yeah.
One. Yeah.
Yeah. But now we've got, we're integrated with several of the local
Mm,
police communities, and we're changing the paradigm. And, and there's the book, It's Okay to Not Be Okay.
yeah.
It's a phenomenal read, but I mean, it's reality. It's, shit sucks. And if you've
Yes.
got a way to help learn how to at least, manage it and understand when you get that feeling in your chest, how to work in it and through it and around it, and process it, and still be okay, and be able to talk to your peers about it. I mean, that's huge. I mean, it's part of, it's what we do.
Absolutely. Oh, Andy, thank you so much for, at the drop of a hat, even with horse emergencies, agreeing to come and do this show.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
Tell our listeners where they can find out more about the organization that you created with Kristin and Anna.
Okay, so the organization is called Checkpoint One, and it's ONE, not the number. And we're at www.checkpoint1.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on all the Instagram, the social media stuff. We're in Doswell, Virginia. We're generally near Kings Dominion and Meadow Event Farm. And if anybody would like to come visit, look, call, text, whatever, well, I won't give out my phone number, but you can email info@checkpoint1.org. I manage that account. So if anybody wants any more information, please reach out. We can also put you in touch with people that have been through what we do, if you're more comfortable doing that. And we also, a lot of times, individuals want to come out, like if it's a peer support team and they have somebody that they think might benefit, we have no issues with people coming out with a friend, with a spouse. We see children over 14 years old. Yeah, I mean, we're here. It's at no cost. There's no insurance requirements. We're bound by all of the same HIPAA laws as any normal therapy center. And a lot of times sometimes we don't even go in with the horses. And we also, we do the yoga, we do mindfulness, we do meditation. We do a whole gamut of stuff. We do archery, which is a lot of talk and discussion about pressure and release. So we have a whole slew of stuff that we do.
I didn't know you did archery too. I'm going to have to get an Airbnb and come back up here and just be there for a week.
Yeah. Come on out.
My God. It's like all my favorite things.
Yeah. Yeah. So
awesome.
And it's quiet and it's in the country.
Yeah. So. Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful property, listeners. I mean, it is gorgeous. And it smells like
fresh, a barn.
Like a barn, which to me is the best smell on the planet. I mean,
33 acres.
Oh my God.
So,
oh, well, listeners, thank you for tuning in, talking about horses and mental health on Mental Health News Radio.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial.